The resistance lives on indeed. What a day. 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 And I am very pleased to report that Catherine, our dear Catherine, our dear Catherine is now number 3 on the Grifties. She has surpassed Donald Trump, Dr. Fauci, oh, so many other people. Bits and bites with bits. Hey, Java man, voting every chance I can. I think we all are because she's really been pushed up to the top. If I remember to vote, I go ahead and vote, but I don't always remember. I sometimes, like today, it was one of those days where I didn't vote as much because I had to fight with the insurance company. I had to go to the bank. I had to do this. So it's been one thing after another, Karma Kid, too. Hey. So this has been one of those crazy, crappy days. You remember when you pop into Reddit? Well, that's one thing Reddit is good for. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with Reddit. And even with the WACB Reddit, it seems we have some ridiculous people there that want to go real life. This is about as real life as I am personally comfortable with doing, is voting, dear Catherine, into the Grifties, higher than Joe Biden or Donald Trump. I did get a laugh, and that's why I used the one on Joel Osteen. Yesterday, I noticed he was at 69. In my childish mind, I just laughed. Star Lily, the Grifties is a website. I've got the link in the description that you can vote for Grifter of the Year. And if you watch their video, what they consider grifter, you will see that our dear Catherine matches that description quite well. Hey, Ginger Lee. So here we are. We have been having one heck of a day. Last night, well, yesterday I wasn't on very much. I haven't been on quite as much this week at all because Monday we went to the beach. And we went to Langosta, which is means lobster beach, where it's a place where you can catch lobsters. And in the past, when I could swim well enough, you could swim out, go to where the rock shelves are. So clear you can see down there with a lobster. So if you have a net or a spear gun, you can have a lobster dinner. We've done that before. This time we did not. It was high tide, and my husband wanted to walk around there where the resort is. Well, guess what? The resort area, half of it is in the estuary full of crocodiles. So he jumped in and I had to go yell at him and say, get out of there. There's crocodiles, there's bull sharks, there's all these different things. They're going to eat your ass for breakfast. So I'm currently trying to clean up even all the sand we brought back with us from that one beach trip. It was not a good one. I had to yell at him to get out of the estuary. And anytime he's like, well, why do you think there are crocodiles here? It's like, because the sign says so in 3 languages. So that's my Costa Rican tale for this week. I'm still laughing. This is horrible to admit. I'm still laughing over that Grifties thing. I'm laughing over the fact that Joel Osteen was at 69 for a long time yesterday. If it didn't cost $3.97, I would have put Unirock up there because Unirock has been acting a fool lately. Hello, I haven't been in this community in a while. I have no clue what's going on. I've been watching all sorts of stuff. Boy, the rabbit holes you can get in. Star Lily, that's what today is. It's all rabbit holes, all crazy rabbit holes. I would like to see Jill Rodriguez in there testify, preach. I would love to see Jill Rodriguez on there. She really belongs on there for what she's done to her children, if nothing else. So today, did you guys go and see Erin's live streams? She did one last night that I caught the tail end of. And then I had to go back and rewatch the entire thing. And I caught her last night on Renelle Smith's video on her live stream. Renelle very seldom live streams, but she live streamed last night. So I watched some of that before bedtime. And I really shouldn't, because I know when I watch those things, the only thing it does is it raises my blood pressure. So, and it makes me not sleep. Hey, F Bear. I just saw you and Erin. So Erin did another live stream in which she took her live stream for last night and she answered the Holy Spackle because she let the Holy Spackle come on, and Erin and Tina had the Holy Spackle going after them left and right, and it was crazy because I watched it, and it was a good live stream, except that I think Holy Spackle went too far. Erin and Tina, like they were petulant children with learning disabilities. She was just being extremely condescending and talking down to them and saying all kinds of different things. And I didn't care for it. The only thing I cared for was when she said, well, Suzanne might have a point why she's mad at Catherine. She thinks everybody else is being too mean to Miss Catherine and that no one should be mean to that troll at all. Just leave her be. Leave her and Unirock be. Now, I was multitasking, listening to Molly and Renelle last night. It was an experience I couldn't do. Oh, FR, it was crazy. It was taxing my very horrible internet here. So I was challenged to watch a lot of this stuff. I'm better off going back sometimes afterwards and watching and listening because I don't always get it the first time. And watching Erin completely dissecting the Holy Spackle thing was pretty darn crazy. And I agree with her. The Holy Spackle was just she was being ridiculous. She kept doing what ifs, isms, and she kept moving the target. She would ask questions, and then, yeah, I thought you were autistic, Sheila. I wasn't sure. She kept changing things up all the time and accusing Tina and Erin of all sorts of things. I do have to get back to Erin about one thing because I said one thing and now I thought about it. So I went back and I looked. Erin, they were talking last night on live stream, and she asked me again. She asked me today about it, about the point where I started getting awful emails. When I've had my falling out with Catherine and I said publicly what had happened, I started getting stuff like, hey, here's your car insurance quote, or here's your life insurance quote. Hey, can we come out to your house and quote your windows and storm doors and stuff that I don't get living here in Costa Rica. So that stuff did flood into my email box from the moment I started fighting with Catherine. And I still think it's her followers. It's her little stupids that are sending this crap out there. They have no power. So their only thing they can do is send you massive amounts of spam. And I don't eat spam in real life. I am not eating that kind of spam. So I just followed away in the spam and said, yeah, this is really dumb. Really, really dumb doing this whole thing. So I did tell Erin about that at the time, but I didn't start getting the pornography in my email box until Natalie came along. That's when all of that started. And I also somebody signed me up to work as a prostitute. That started at the time that Nat came into the community. So I got to go back and tell Erin I was mistaken because I had to go back and take a look. Spackle is a bee. She keeps coming into Erin's chat and bringing up the same issues that have been answered. She keeps turning it back on Erin. She gets me angry. Exactly. I could not believe that last night. And I don't blame Erin for taking that and breaking it down at all. Like I said, the way she was talking down to them was just unbelievable. Asking the same questions again and again. She's coming to mind. I think I have her blocked. I know I have her blocked on Twitter because she was part of the faction of people that were just fighting with others so much that it was like, nope, if you're messing with my cha-cha and my peace, you're gone. To quote Ice-T, if it robs you of your peace, it's already too expensive. So I don't like that. I like being peaceful. This has been a very unpeaceful day for me between the bank, the lawyer yesterday, and then having to deal with my insurance company. There are times when I just freaking hate adulting, and being able to run away to YouTube or whatever and have a good time. It's nice. It's a nice break for me. Now, Spackle and some of the others that the I hate Steve brigade, and that's fine. You don't have to like Steve. You can hate Steve. You can think Steve is the bomb or Steve deserves a bomb. And either way, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with you. The problem I have is when people start shouting out their opinion and trying to force you to agree with them on everything. I'm not going to agree with everybody on everything. Hell, I may not even agree with myself on some days. KJ allegedly takes that break for 10 to 18 hours a day. That could be. Like I said, I haven't barely been on the internet since probably Sunday sometime, or maybe Saturday. It was when my husband and we had a come to Jesus talk. And there have been some bumps in the road having to do with the asthma, and he had to realize he's got to paint that bedroom. I can't do it. I did it, and it was okay, but it wasn't good. I need to stay away from anything that makes the asthma crazy. So for me, I'm trying to order my day that way. And then I had Monday where I'm screaming at him to get out of the estuary before he gets eaten by a crocodile, and it was high tide, so there wasn't much walking. It was miserable weather. It was raining. And it took us half a day to get back because we had things to do. So I don't see KJ taking those kind of breaks. Yesterday, I was very intentional about it, and it turns out it was a good thing because I had to try and make our new TV take Netflix. And unfortunately, it would not. I had nothing but trouble with it. It's Linux based, and it's been years since I fooled with Linux. So I'm having to run some diagnostics. That's all I did yesterday was just work with our televisions, trying to get everything squared away. It was kind of nice. It's kind of nice being away from all the fighting and the feuding and the fussing. So yesterday I was talking about James Dobson. And one of the issues that I am having right now is that, did I take a pill? I don't know. Is that I've had to step up with the Lyrica another couple doses, and it's making me goofy. Yesterday, I talked about James Dobson because I wanted to talk about Brittany and why she's so angry with her parents and what some of these cult-like things believe, and about Michael Pearl, James Dobson. Abusing your children is pretty much embedded in a lot of evangelical culture. So I was talking about that a little bit yesterday. The problem is because I have really stepped up my Lyrica dose, this part of my body, my brain doesn't always work right. And I was looking through my notes and I got James Dobson mixed up with Bill Gothard. Can you believe that? Oh, he's not married. He's never been married. So I have to correct myself. James Dobson is married. He has children. He was who I was thinking of. I just started thinking about the particulars of Bill Gothard with him. And I don't even know why my brain went into that space. But he's married with children. And I dug up the story that tells me he's not a good person. Hey, home perm. I dug up the infamous, where are you? The infamous dachshund beating story. I was looking at it on nospank.net because I am a big believer in gentle parenting and using a parenting method I used to use involved making the child have consequences. I mean, real life consequences, because you don't really want to raise a veal in a box kid who thinks everything they do is perfect and there's no consequences for anything. But with the kind of parenting, love and logic that I used to use, there's consequences to everything. And that allows you to empathize with the child and say, I am so sorry that you missed doing X, Y, and Z, but because he did this thing, that's why this can't happen. So having consequences is a much better teacher, I think, in the long run than beating a child silly. Unfortunately, in evangelical town, that's just not it at all. And so Dobson actually wrote a piece about the biggest confrontation in his life with rebellion had to do with his dachshund, Sigmund Freud. Yes, he named his damn dog for Freud. Hola, hola, Katie. Hola from Costa Rica. And so he was talking about the dog being a member of his family, how much he loved him. And it made me laugh because he described him as having an anarchist nature. How can a dog have an anarchist nature? I don't get it. Dog have an anarchist nature. I don't get it. So he said, we had some classic battles before he reluctantly yielded to my authority. To my authority. Oh, Helm Perm, former Laura S. Thank you so much. My yarn phone, I'm getting ready to buy and have it shipped over here, I think, via my son. He said he'd ship it to me. So I'm getting ready to spend all my money on a pile of yarn. Um, so back to poor little Sigmund Freud. He went out of town for 3 days and said that Sigmund became completely rebellious after his 3 days and refused to yield to his authority. He told Siggy to get in his bed, and Siggy refused. And then he went and got a belt because he said, I have seen this defiant mood before and knew there was one way to deal with it. The only way to make Siggy obey was to threaten him with destruction. Nothing else worked. I turned and went to my closet and got a small belt to help me reason with Mr. Freud. So, yeah, so here we have an animal, okay? An animal that is not, hey, Hermes, mom. Hey, oh, I never met a cat. You're right. Can you imagine trying that on a cat? Oh my gosh. I'm thinking of all the claws and stuff. I can't even trim Miss Pork's claws. She's the sweetest cat, but she won't let me do it. I can do it to the other cats around here. She won't let me. She will take you apart if you even attempt it. So when I think about cats and making people obey and making cats obey is just a fool's game. And so he's talking about poor Siggy here. And I don't know a lot about dachshunds. I had a cousin that had oodles of them that were her favorite dog. What I do remember is they kind of smelled and they were kind of nippy and yippy. And I know Freud was addicted to cocaine. I don't think this Freud was, though. Um, I remember them being somewhat defiant, and he's describing a defiant personality here. And people can have those things. What developed next is impossible to describe. That tiny dog and I had the most vicious fight ever staged between man and beast. I fought him up one wall and down the other, with both of us scratching and clawing and growling and swinging the belt. I'm embarrassed by the memory of the entire scene. He should be embarrassed. That's awful. Inch by inch, I moved him towards the family room and his bed. As a final desperate maneuver, Siggy backed into a corner for one last snarling stand. I eventually got him back to bed, but only because I outweighed him 200 pounds to 12 pounds. And he says, but this is not a book about the discipline of dogs. There's an important moral to my story that is highly relevant in the world of children. Just as surely as a dog will occasionally challenge authority of his leader, so will a little child, but only more so. No. I would like to see that dog swing a belt too, Java man. Or I would like to see him confront a 200-pound dog. It's picturing Ziggy swinging the belt. Let me tell you something. The hell that these people believe in, they better hope it isn't real, because if it is, some of them might be visiting. And I can well imagine a customized hell with a 200-pound Ziggy with a belt. I just can't believe that he was bragging about abusing an animal, and that is animal abuse. Make no mistake about it. Exactly why it was so important for him the dog to sleep in the bed in the corner in a sealed area, I don't know. He doesn't give any kind of indication that the dog is destructive or anything like that. It's just he wants the dog to sleep here. So his method is to use the belt. Well, he goes on later in the story and he talks about the belt being the only way to sometimes to reason with children. He talks about creating little dictators by engaging with your child. It's impossible to create. It's possible to create a fussy, demanding baby by rushing to pick him up every time he utters a whimper or sigh. Infants are fully capable of learning to manipulate their parents through a process called reinforcement, whereas any behavior that produces a pleasant result will tend to occur. No, 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 no. Looking at your child as the enemy is the ultimate and just wrong as far as I'm concerned. Something on the internet that said conservative Christians spitting an attorney with you is not a selling point that you think it is. Exactly, Java man. I would rather be somewhere else than with them. I mean, doing just about anything else. I don't know how many of you have seen, which movie is that? I got to think of the name of it. The one where Adam Sandler is Satan's son, and he's one of three, and he's like the goofy one, and he has to come back to Earth to get his brothers back. And it depicts a personalized but funny hell. I think that is one of the funniest ones. And these guys, and they're promoting, what they're promoting is cruelty. They're promoting cruelty to animals, cruelty to children. I just saw your notification, Cheryl. wasn't sure I was coming on today. It's been one of those crazy days. I was trying to say, little Nicky. Yes, little Nicky. The men who are involved with the patriarchy are only concerned with exuding their dominance. Here's the thing. If they were decent guys, they wouldn't have to try so hard to push their patriarchy on everybody. Everybody would see that they were superior and bow down to them and be obedient and stuff. But when you have to prove constantly how much you are a DICK, you're not exactly promoting the love of the Lord. You're just promoting love of yourself. And I think the whole idea about patriarchy is just ridiculous the way they play it. Plus, the Duggars and other multi-children family, the enemy outnumbers you. Maybe that's why they're beating on their children, is they're outnumbered. But here's the bad thing about all that beating. Kids grow up, and if you have somebody who has a very strong will, they may fight you back. It also sets up children for a lifetime. The system draws weak men who want to look strong. Absolutely. Absolutely it does. And a lot of times, these weak guys have very bad marriages, and their wives are so desperate to change them that they're the ones that drag them into this quiverful nonsense. And then you have an even harder time because they're trying to submit harder and harder because they've been told that if they submit hard enough and the right way enough to the Lord, that the Lord will change their husbands. That doesn't always happen. I don't know anybody whose husband actually changed for the better from doing that. As much as they promote it, they talk about it, they push it. I've never seen it work. Not even in my life of 17, 18 years in patriarchy. I never saw that work. Not once. What I saw was a bunch of weak, whiny, childlike men that were always pushing their ideas out, and their ideas were just stupid for the most part. And the women were always trying to make that happen, and it never really did. It never worked. Poor women, making everything work at the church, making those men feel like men, and it never worked. And they're all playing games themselves, thinking they're all that, and that they're in control. It's more of a manipulation, I think, because a lot of women are actually the ones in control. I observed that dynamic the one time I met Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar. Michelle controls everything. We just don't see it because it is behind the scenes. Like so many quiverful mothers I know, it's really her. It's her. and he's bending to her will while she's pretending to bend to his in public, and they're propping up each other in their own weird way. And I'm not sure what fun that is in a relationship. I mean, if you can't even be honest with the person you're married to, and in that circumstance, very few of them actually are honest with each other about anything, everything from what they buy to what they do to how they spent their day. So many lies, just lies upon lies upon lies. So maybe Kate Joy should have stayed at her old church, her old rock and roll church that she says. I will have to say, I did like one thing the Holy Spackle said. She said, I might have a reason to be angry at Katie. Well, you think she takes my content? She stole my personal leaving the church story? Of course, of course. Of course. So also, I got to circle back. I made a note of something I wanted to talk about too with the Holy Spackle and Erin and all that. The Holy Spackle and Erin, they were talking about Katie's R allegation and what that involved and how Erin used a FOIA request to have that happen. Could probably use it this point, sure. She probably could, Java Man. Can you imagine him taking a belt to her? Mm-hmm. Well, that FOIA request and her whole thing about saying that the officer didn't take her seriously and didn't report it, didn't investigate it. Erin did a deep dive to find out that that was absolutely not true, and she was lying about the cop. She may have been hurting the cop's entire career, and that was what that was about. But the Holy Spackle was carrying on about like they'd done some horrible thing and re-traumatized KJ. I got to say this. They didn't, I don't think they did a rape kit. If they did one, it was so far after the fact as to be useless. Number one. And number two, there was no question that the sex occurred. It was just a question about whether it was consensual or forced. What was the reason you, I'll tell you in a minute, F Bear. So here's the thing I want to throw out there. They were arguing about how much fake reports there are out there, that whether Katie's was taken seriously or not. It was investigated seriously. It was taken seriously, even though she has defamed the cop a number of times and said no. And so I took a few statistics after that little conversation they had about R. False accusations are rare. They only make up 4.5% of all accusations, and 63% of SA occurrences are never once reported. So those are some scary things to throw out there that I had to just throw in there because Erin and them didn't get around to it on their thing. Okay, the reason I left Java Man, I'm not Java Man, Autistic Chill. I left my old church. I was not going to leave. Okay, I was all on board with staying. My husband had been going back and forth from our church to the Methodist church, seesawing back and forth every Sunday. He was going for the first Methodist church service, then showing up halfway during our service. And people were starting to talk. That's one thing you can count on in quiverful churches. People jack their jaws and gossip more than any place I've ever been. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that for here too, because that happens here at this church. And this week I had to write a statement, put on my Facebook to shut people down over gossiping about me at the new church. So the old church, they were talking about him. I had long talks with the pastor about this. I talked a little bit with him about it. We talked about what was going on, and it was obvious he didn't like at the church, our quiverful church. He was going to go to the Methodist church. And he and I had agreed on this. So he showed up that Sunday. But before he showed up that Sunday, I got to back up. I was on worship team that Sunday, like I was 3 out of 4 weekends. So I was up on the platform. We were rehearsing. At my old church at Possum Creek, we might go through 8 or 9 worship songs and the service started. You could go to our church, start at like 8:30 in the morning. We didn't get out till 2 in the afternoon many days. Long services, all kinds of things. So I was there rehearsing, and my daughter, who would have been about 13 and 14, was there. And she sat in our seats on the 3rd row. Okay. There were some other people there during rehearsal, sitting there reading their Bibles or praying or whatever. And when I had come in that day, the pastor said, "Hey, I'm going to take you off hosting Bible study for our town because your husband is leaving to go to the Methodist church, and I don't feel comfortable not having a husband-wife team leading the Bible study." And I said, "Okay, thanks." While inside, I'm jumping around going, "Yippee!" Because hosting the Bible study was the worst thing in the world. So many problems, so many people with issues acting out. So I was happy about this. While I was rehearsing, I saw that my big nemesis at the church, a guy who gossiped about me and started all kinds of problems for me, had physically assaulted me to the point where I'd tried to get a restraining order at one point, and I got shamed out of it by the church. Okay. This guy, I'm just going to call him, I am just going to call him Worshiping Waldo because he was crazy about worship. Worshiping Waldo talked to the pastor out in the hallway. I could see from the platform straight down the hallway to the front door. He came in, the pastor talked to him. He left, he came into the sanctuary. He went from person to person to person, sitting and waiting, and talked to each one of them. When he got within so many feet of my daughter started crying, just boo-hooing, weeping and wailing. And so that was right around the end of the worship team rehearsal. So I got off the platform and went to her, and I took her to the restroom and wiped her face and said, "What is going on? Why are you crying? Why are you crying?" And she told me that Worshiping Waldo had been going to each person sitting there in the congregation and telling them that my husband had left for a homosexual abortion Methodist church and that we were all going to hell in a handbasket, basically. And here my daughter was crying, saying, "Is he going to hell? Is he going to hell?" My daughter was just freaking out. It was just heartbreaking. So I made the decision right there in that moment and said, I have to leave this place. This place is way too toxic for me. There's too much stuff going on. If your child is being hurt by this, you need to leave. So I dried her eyes and sent her off to the teen group. And my husband pulled up about that time, and I was standing outside waiting for him. And before we could even go to the church, I said, "We have to leave. You're leaving. This needs to be our last Sunday ever here. It's just too much. I've been through too much. I've just put up with too much. I've had too many things happen to me. This is the straw that broke the camel's back." So that idiot making my daughter cry was the last thing on a giant pile of stuff that started when they started calling yoga demonic. When they started saying that yoga was demonic, and they started trying to do exorcisms left and right, and they started doing all kinds of weird stuff, I started pulling away gradually. And then when that happened, that was just it. That was it for me. That was the final straw. I completely reversed my decision. I tried to leave with dignity and order. I asked the pastor to release us, to pray over us and release us, and he refused. He told me he wasn't releasing us for anything. And the next day he called me and ordered me back to the church, ordered me to divorce my husband and for myself and the kids to stay at the church. And I said, "Are you crazy?" And I hung up on him. And I haven't looked back since. It was definitely the right thing to do. We should have probably left 2 or 3 years before, because we had really gotten wacky by the end. What started as a simple country church that we first joined had gone into like wacko town. Oh, it was just crazy. And that was the end for me. Hey, Beth Idol. So thank you, Autistic Shield. Yeah, it was kind of hard. Can you see why I got upset when Katie Joy started And she didn't take the entire story. What she would do is she would take little snippets. You would hear a sentence that was straight out of my testimony that I'd given in the past, articles I'd written about leaving. Yeah, and she kept talking about rock and roll church and the worship music as rock and roll, and it was just pretty crazy. So that's where my dislike of her started to happen when I was training her at Pathos, and it hardened when I found out she was stealing from me. That was it. So there is another case that I'm looking at that is an absolute crazy one. It's a true crime case, and I don't usually cover true crime. In fact, I'm not even sure true crime should be a thing on YouTube that anybody can do. I'm almost of the opinion that we should only let licensed people who are like private investigators do this crap. Why do I say that? Because there was a thing that I covered for No Longer Quivering. I wrote a series of articles that took over 6 months. Newspapers throughout the U.S., and especially Texas and Louisiana, picked up the articles and ran them. It was about a murder case that was over 40 years old. They never found who did it. And people who went to the Independent Fundamentalist Baptist linked child home in Louisiana, New Bethany, troubled teen home, believed the girl was killed there. I don't think it's hard to get a PLA. It is in Java, man. It's actually pretty easy many places. So I've seen a couple of, quote, true crimers cover this case. I came to the conclusion then that it was likely somebody at that church. I still think it probably was. But here's the thing I've discovered about the church. That particular church may have been linked to sex trafficking. There's indications that it was. There is crazy testimony from some of the girls who've been there and some of the boys who were at Longstreet, which was the boys' facility, that there was sex trafficking going on left and right. And so I've seen a few YouTubers cover this case who haven't done it justice at all. I had one I saw that used photographs that I had, that I was the only one that had, and charts and things out of my articles. And she didn't link to anything I'd done. So that was like strike number one. Strike number two was finding out that she claimed a murder weapon and a killer that the evidence doesn't really support, and B, there was never any found murder weapon. Everything to do with the case was burned up when the coroner's office caught on fire, and it burned up everything in storage, including everything to do with this girl. So there was what she said, the conclusion she reached, there's nothing to support it, but she's swearing is God's honest truth. And the person that she fingered is the person that the sheriff's department has been trying to finger because he's dead. I may not know much, but I know that the Bossier Parish Sheriff's Office wants to declare this case closed, even if they have to say, well, it was this guy, he probably did it, he's dead. And I don't think so at all. I think they have barely begun to scratch the surface. I think somebody connected to New Bethany killed this poor girl. I think they arranged the body to be found in a certain way in a certain place that they knew of. And it wasn't very far from the place, within about 10 miles. So it wouldn't have been inconceivable. And she was actually wearing clothing that indicated that she was at that facility. So there's a lot of things that don't support the YouTuber's conclusion. I came on there and said something about it, wrote about it, and said, look, I covered this case. I have several large file cabinets full of documents. I went to the state of Louisiana. I pulled documents. I looked documents up. I went and talked to people. I went in the state archives and was able to research a lot. And the conclusion this person came to, I think, is extremely wrong. But if you're a popular YouTuber with lots and lots of people and a lot of stands that have lost their damn minds, they'll attack you, because I got quite a bit of hate over that deal, which was silly because she was making stuff up as she went. And I was curious to see where she would go with this. And one of the people that came up with this person's name was his daughter. But she was a small child when all of this occurred. And the memory of children isn't always as accurate as an adult. Adults' memories aren't even that accurate. So I'm taking everything the guy's daughter with a giant boulder of salt. But God, heaven forfend that you say something that another YouTuber doesn't agree with, because they will send their stands. I also experienced that with a big YouTuber that looks at graves, because he used one of those little flying camera things to go up over the walls of St. Louis number 1 and 2 to take video, which is forbidden. That's Catholic Church property. You could only go in as a group, and they don't let you take photographs. We're not supposed to take photographs, and you're definitely not supposed to ever film in there. And this guy filmed it. I said something like, hey, that's not cool. And he went into a bunch of other Catholic cemeteries in New Orleans and took some footage. It's forbidden. It even says it right on the gates of these places. Drones. Yes, he had a drone. And he just totally ignored all of that. And I was very upset with him, because I have family buried in those places. I mean, he went to St. Rose and he filmed. I have family there. I have family buried in St. Louis 1 and 2. My family goes way back in Louisiana. And it was just disheartening. I said something to him about it in his YouTube comments about, hey, that's not cool at all. And again, it was his stand base. So I don't worry too much about agitating our dear Catherine's fan base, because their methods are silly. They either sign you up to get insurance quotes, or they come and salt your hair, which is kind of lame if you ask me. So I don't think YouTubers should be exempt from changing and doing things wrong, like I said, and admitting they've done stuff wrong. Like I said yesterday, I plugged up big time. And I had to take a humble and said, yeah, you're right. This Lyrica, I'm not thinking straight. I got the wrong guy's history. Sometimes you have to do that, and you have to have thick enough skin. And your stands shouldn't be going after anybody for any reason, even if they called you the C word, even if they tried to get people to come to your house. You shouldn't be messing with their stands at all, or with them at all. Anyway, so there's a case that somebody asked me to take a look at that I've just barely started to scratch the surface of. It's the Rockstar Cheer thing. Rockstar Cheer is like a chain of places, but there's a guy who was running the main one there in South Carolina. And there's now a federal lawsuit that's been filed, because the cheerleaders have come forward and said they were SA'd by one of the coaches. And one of the head coaches killed himself the other day. So there's a lot going on in this case. The kids were alleging that this particular coach that killed himself had SA'd at least 6 boys and girls and provided them with drugs and alcohol, according to the federal lawsuit. And that's the allegations. And they called it, quote, a coven of sexual predators, unquote. And said that this had gone on for more than a decade, which kind of blows my mind that it did. And somebody said it was the same kind of institutional failure that we saw happen with the whole Larry Nassar thing and him sexually abusing all those girls. Let's hope that KJ doesn't get a hold of this case and butcher it. Java man, I am very afraid of that. That's why I'm mentioning this now to us, because we're going to keep looking at this. My daughter tried her hand at cheerleading. She was part of a cheer team off and on throughout her childhood. She got to middle school and was going to be one of their cheerleaders. But her father got sick with cancer, and it was a very stressful time. She never pursued it. So there is that. So I'm a small amount if you're a familiarities. Why am I struggling? I haven't even taken my afternoon liquor dose yet. I'm familiar with the cheer world just a little bit. I'm kind of like for a lot of it because at the time I was going to Possum Creek, my old church, and I don't need to tell you that Possum Creek really frowned on it. So my daughter had a hobby that she loved that they thought was ridiculously bad. And while I don't think it's ridiculously bad, I think like competitive dance and so many other things, football, parents can get really too tied up in it, and so can kids, and they forget to let their kids be kids. And there's enormous pressure. This is a very competitive field, enormous pressure. So they just filed the lawsuit on Thursday. 4 girls, 2 boys said they were abused by Scott Foster and others with Rockstar gyms. The lawsuit suggests there could be up to or more than 100 survivors of the abuse. That just breaks my heart. That is 100 kids whose lives are changed forever by all this. Don't take alcohol with your medication and challenge your viewers to a fight. You want to fight, Luca? Yeah, no, I don't do that. I don't drink alcohol at all anymore because one of the medications I'm on makes my blood pressure go through the roof if you drink with it. And since I don't want to have a stroke, I don't ever do that as a result. I did it once and I was kind of like, you want to fight, Luca? It was not pretty. So the case is really based upon the allegations that Scott Foster and the other coaches did their best to intimidate and isolate their targets, according to some of the media things. They isolate them to make them feel alone and make them feel responsible for the abuse, that they are the reason they're being abused, which is sad on so many levels. Foster was only 49, and they found him dead in his car at State Park on the 22nd of August. Shot himself in the head in Greenville County, South Carolina. And it says they allege a number of people either knew Foster was abusing his cheer students and ignored it, or did not rules and procedures in place to stop the abuse. That is, I'm still wondering if that was going to be a physical fight. There's no telling Java Man. So I'm expecting her to jump on this when she finally tires of talking about the rich lady who was kidnapped and then their body turned up. That case, KJ didn't say a whole lot. She didn't say as much as she usually does. The whole thing with Marvin McRae has just got a whole lot worse. And Molly Golightly is actually talking about taking out a restraining order against dear Catherine, our dear Catherine. And I can't say that I totally blame her. I think if I were Letitia, I would definitely do it. Right now, Letitia is in the hospital having all kinds of problems with stress. I want to say they said she had Bell's palsy. Whatever she had going on, stress makes it that much worse. And KJ is apparently, they're saying, is added to the stress to the point where Letitia is now in the hospital. That is just a sad, sad thing that that's what's going on with the whole thing, because Letitia Bias, Marvin Sr., all of them, even Dre McRae, are mourning the loss of the man they knew. Even if he lives, he is never, hey, Nancy, he is never going to be normal, this guy. He is going to have problems the rest of his life. And I don't know much, but I know that with brain injuries, it changes you. He's not going to be the same guy. His personality will be different. Even if he came back 100%, the personality is going to be different. It just changes you. It's a hard recovery. Minimum of 6 months of the worst fatigue you've ever had in your life. Frustrating that your body won't work the way you need it or want it to work. Now, the other day, I was encouraged because I saw a new article. Oh, you know, Personal Nancy, yeah. I saw a new article where they said that recovery from brain injuries didn't just happen the first 6 months. I used to say, especially with strokes, the first 6 months, whatever you get is what you get and what you end up in. Then a couple of years ago, they said, well, it's whatever you have at the end of 2 years. Now they're saying, no, that neuroplasticity can keep rewiring around the stroke and you can know that neuroplasticity can keep rewiring around the stroke and you can get better. I don't know how true that is. I do know that my guy here who sees me, my GP, says I have come world since I had it. And that's what he's told his brother. I'm doing so well. It doesn't feel like it. So I don't know what it's going to be like for Marvin to come back from this, but it's going to be bad. I'm a brain injury survivor from October 2020 and again in January 2021. Oh, I'm so sorry, Nancy. That sucks. I've had 2 strokes and neither one of them were easy to recover from. This thalamic one, the more serious one, I'm still in recovery. I'm still relearning to use stuff. KJ will one day get what's due her. You might see or no, but she will, and we all will answer one day. Exactly, Star Lily. I think her karma and Armageddon is going to be 7M. Husband had a stroke 2.5 years ago, and he's slowly regressing, especially mentally. Parkinson's now is rough. Oh, Amy, you have my sympathy for that one because I know how hard that is. Mine was impact, had subdural hematoma. Oh my goodness. I don't wish this on anyone. It's hell. Yes, absolutely, it's hell. And it's hell when you're trying to recover too, because you are used to yourself a certain way. You're used to being able to do certain things, and now you can't. The other day when I said I went to Lobster Beach, I went to Langosta, and I'm standing there on the rock shelf. I'm looking down. I'm steady on the rock shelf. I have my cane planted. I'm balanced on my feet, the whole 9 yards, because my issue is balance now. Balance and no sensation on the left side of my body, which makes using it a challenge because I can't feel what I'm doing. So I'm standing there. The waves are not even reaching my feet. They're just at the lip. And then I got hit with a rogue wave. And let me tell you, my feet started to come out from under me. I started to fall on those rocks. I caught myself, thank God, because I had no desire to make an impact injury on top of strokes. And it's disappointing. I was so pissed off. I had to retreat back onto the sand up in the trees and sit down for a minute. The old me would have been out there swimming in the ocean. No longer. I have no short-term memory like the movie 50 First Dates. I stay dizzy and extremely tired. Oh my goodness, Nancy. I write notes now. I write copious notes to myself, even when I want to talk about something on here, so that I don't flub up somebody's history like I did yesterday. I'm seriously considering writing a book because there's nothing out there from a caregiver's perspective. Amy, that is an excellent idea. That is an excellent idea because there's not. There's a few from survivor perspectives, but very few from caregivers. And you could really do a lot of good, I think, if you covered that. You know, that's one thing that I will say with Catherine. I tried to get her to stick to her topic of raising a chronically ill child without religion. And she could have got the fame and the acclaim she wanted had she just stayed doing that. Because she had so much experience, and at that time there was not much out there available at all. Oh, Java man. Is it buffering for anyone else? Let me go ahead and ask. Because if you're buffering, probably everybody else is, and I probably need to get off. We're having bad weather here. It's raining and it's nasty. A voice to text, no buffering. Okay, no buffering. So I'm going to continue on since I'm not buffering from everybody else. So expect the Rockstar Cheer. I'm going to look into that. Now I've been looking at the murders in South Carolina. I have somebody that lives there that's been talking about this over and over, and I'm just starting to look at that. I don't know if that fits anything that I'm going to talk about here, but I want to look at it. The reason I'm interested in Cheer is because of my daughter and her experiences with Cheer, and just knowing that world, knowing how bizarre it is, knowing how weird the parents are, knowing how competitive and crazy that world is. I am just horrified that somebody's been exploiting children. I was a caregiver. It was so wearing with no let up. It really needs to be a book. Cheryl, it does. And I've said this in regards to Catherine too, because when my child was sick, there was no respite care for me. It was me doing everything, hovering over her, taking her here, taking her there, having this treatment, that treatment. And it was rough. Fortunately, after about 18 months, a couple of years, she got a lot better. And she was pretty stable for the rest of her childhood, even though she did have some ups and downs. And I had a better handle on it then by that point. I had a support team. I had friends. I had the whole 9 yards. And while I had nobody that really had an ill child that they were caring for that understood what I was going through, it didn't really matter because I did have some backup at that point. If nothing else, these types of books can be a source of support for caregivers that don't feel alone. Exactly, Nancy, exactly. So that they don't feel alone. Because if you're doing this every day, you definitely start to feel alone, particularly if you're going back and forth to treatments and things. I remember thinking that even during one of her many hospitalizations, sitting in, this is one thing that UVA did that I liked. In the children's wing where she was, there was a room at the end of the hallway where there were books and games and different things that were adult themed. They were there for adults, and it was a parents' lounge. They also had a washer and dryer. They had sandwiches and drinks for the adults. They had things like that because there were so many times that somebody came in there with the clothes on their back from far away from their home. So the hospital was very supportive there. It was a good environment. At least when we were in the parents' lounge, we could commiserate. And if you don't have any other people you know this child is chronically ill, that can be a big thing. If I hear one more time, just to be thankful he's alive, I'm going to scream. People have no clue how totally exhausting it is. No, they don't. You just want to give up. Exactly. Yes, and for those who have their loved ones that sleep a lot, especially in the beginning of an illness, there's so much. So much. And the thing is, you don't ever let down your guard. I don't know about you guys, but I was always hyper aware with my child, hyper aware all the time. And you can't live in a state of hyper awareness very long. It's extremely exhausting, and you end up completely mentally worn out. You know, I talk about the time of my life because that's when I joined this church. I joined my Quiverful church back not long after my daughter got sick because I was just at the bottom. I was at the rock bottom when I joined. Every day I got up and I thought about different ways to kill myself. That's how depressed I had gotten and how stressful my life had become. I had a business that was failing that I had to keep running. I had a lot of things going on. Yes, because you never allow yourself to fully relax and rest when you sleep. Exactly, Nancy. So that's where I was with that. And that is how I ended up with my old church. We went there. My husband liked it. I was just so worn out, so emotionally and mentally exhausted and just physically exhausted that they started love bombing me. And I got pretty significantly manipulated. And when they prayed for my daughter and she incrementally improved, that was just proof to me that this was the right move to make. It's hard to get good rest. Even sleeping, caregivers are being watchful. Cheryl, that's exactly right. Exactly. And yeah, it gives hope. My husband told me he was tired. I asked, tired, or just tired? He said, tired. Yep, there is that. And I've had to say that with my own self since I've had this stroke. I've had to learn. And like I said, I had a stream last week where I was talking about putting myself first, something I just have never done because of everything I've been through in my lifetime. It's just been a lot. And I had a lot of unresolved trauma from my childhood that I actually had to go to therapy and get over because it was a bunch. My family of origin was filled with alcoholics and people who had some issues going on. And that took some getting over. My husband and I had an argument this morning. It's a pretty big argument at first. And it was all about expectations because I had changed how I do things. And before I was like going around after going, oh dear, let me do this, let me close this, let me do that. I've stopped doing that. Yes, Nancy, I've worked hard my entire life. I deserve is my retirement. So anyway, I'm not going to do a video tomorrow. I'm going to try to upload the one I did where I made Plarn and showed how to use it. And I got it. You'll laugh at this. This guy that we go to church with, and I've got to say, the church lately is spun into the church my husband goes to. I'll stop going. He's spun into a pile of crazy. People have quit or been fired from various positions, so it's like in flux on everything, and even memberships are way down. Plarn is plastic yarn you make out of plastic bags. I'll have to show you. It's pretty awesome. It's a fun hobby for free. It's free yarn. So all of that is going on. He's being upset by it. I'm not being upset by it because I have low expectations with church now because I've just been through so much with so many different ones. And when you have no expectations, you don't get hurt with these things. I had a situation where people there were asking him about me and about my conditions and why I didn't go to church, if I was an atheist, various things. And he was really uncomfortable with the idea of talking about it at all. So I had to come up with a way to basically said, thank you for asking. Up yours. Smiley face. And it took a while. My husband was in an industrial accident in 2000. He was buried in a load of 2-inch black iron pipe, crushed his back, right? Knee and neck. Oh my goodness. 9 back surgeries later. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that story, Lily. That is really tragic. I love to get back to church, but I'm leery because the ones that ran the fastest away from us were the Christians. That's very true. That's the other thing. If they're asking questions about my medical condition, I said, ask me directly. Do not ask my husband. I used to make flowers and roses out of plastic 6-pack rings. Now that would be interesting to see. I haven't seen it. Episcopalian. So tomorrow we're going to Liberia with one of these people from this church. One people who I know is very problematic, who I don't like. He's so problematic. Then I'm going to have to be guarding my words all day because if I told him what I really think about him, it would probably blister him. He's tried to use my husband so many times. At least my husband now realizes that this guy only wants to use him. He's not genuinely interested. There's that. So it's going to be hard. I have to go tomorrow to Liberia. This guy has an appointment at the hospital that I was hospitalized in 6 months ago. My insurance company has not. I do have some Bluetooth. I'll have to wear them. I'll have to use them. The insurance company has never reimbursed me for my hospital stay, and they finally denied it. And I talked to them today, and I see what they want. So I have to go back to the hospital and say, please print out the itemized bill in dollars instead of colones, because when I submitted it, the thing was in colones. I did the conversion rate knowing what the colony rate was that day and put it in dollars, and the insurance company has completely rejected it as a result. So tomorrow is going to be that challenge, plus the challenge of doing the monthly Costco run, which is always going to be interesting. We have a third person with us, and we usually load the back seat to the top. I don't quite know what we're going to do yet, but it's going to be an interesting day, I think. I'll probably have some tales to tell. This guy is ridiculous, ridiculous. He tried to get me to review his book here on this channel that he's written. And I told him I have to have a review copy. If I have a review copy, I'll read it and I will do an honest review. I used to do reviews all the time on books and movies at NLQ, and I can still do that here. But he refused to give me a review copy. If you don't give a review copy, I don't look at your book. You're out of luck. And I looked a little bit at his book on his website, and it's ridiculous. I would have given him a bad review. Strap him to the roof. Nancy, I really want to. I want to do that. He's the one that jumped all over my husband when our car broke down and the transmission died. And I kept telling my husband, it's time to let this car go and to buy a brand new one with no problem. Bullied my husband into having the car towed to Tamarindo, which was a 3.5 hour ride. It was a lot of just plain old effery going on. So I'm still watching bad evangelical behavior. And we're a long ways from an organized religion here. There is a Catholic church. They don't offer English services. The 3 churches that do English services, one of them would not. Why does he have to be with you tomorrow? Because we're going to Liberia. It's an hour ride from here. He needs a ride to Liberia, so he asked us if we would take him, and he would pay for the gas. I have to go to the very hospital that his doctor practices in. I have to go there anyway and pick up paperwork to resubmit this to the insurance to force him to pay it because it was like $4,000. And while it wouldn't kill me not to pay it, who was going to turn down $4,000 and stay away from Hebrew roots? Yeah, I know to do that. Well, this guy's just a user. He just is. He has no money. He's living here almost nothing, just his Social Security check. And I got to tell you, if you're here and you aren't willing to, and you don't have money and you're not willing to do a little work, they don't want you here. They make it really hard. You can't even open a bank account. He is not able to open a bank account at the bank that we've been dealing with since the day we got here. We did it differently. We showed that we were serious. We did all the serious things you're supposed to do to be considered an investor in Costa Rica and become a resident through investments. We did that. We did our research before we came here. We didn't come here on 5 pennies and expecting to be able to live on 5 pennies. Things are cheaper here. No doubt a lot of things are. Some things are a lot more expensive. Gas is double. Okay. So that was another reason to get a new car. We got something that used about half the gas that our old car did. That was a reason to get a smaller car again too. Electric is not twice as expensive, but it is expensive. It's a little bit more than it is in the States. And all my friends are telling me that the electric has gone up tremendously in the States. So we might all be even now on that. Everything else is pretty much cheaper unless you're trying to buy something imported from the States. You can get the latest technology pretty easily here. You may pay a little extra, but it's worth it to be able to. I go into our Costco here, which we call Price Smart, bought a new TV, same prices as the States, a nice LG, even though I can't program it in to do Netflix because it has got Linux and Ubuntu, and I'm like completely in the dark. I've got to download and figure out all that. But you can't live here on nothing, and you have to do things. You have to do things with decency and order. You have to do them a certain way. Costa Rica used to be notorious for people laundering drug money. So now they have such strict rules about banking, about money, what you can do as an expat coming here. Very stringent rules because of that. And I understand why they would do that, because they are trying to protect themselves. They're trying to make sure that you come here to retire. You're not going to be a burden on the system. You're going to pay your CAHA, which is your insurance. That you're not going to be a burden on the system. You're going to bring in money. California says they want to stop making gas cars. What do they think those electric cars need to charge? I don't know, Star Lily, but I laughed over that because here, when we first got here, they made a proclamation where you were going to not be able to buy gas cars after 2025. It would be all electric. And I'm just looking at the electrical grid here, which flickers a lot, which goes on and off, and thinking, and they want to go all electric? Now, all our electric here is renewable resources. It's wind, it's solar, it's all sorts of other resources, but it is, I could, but I don't want to ask Mr. Duck, or I'll ask my son. He knows Linux better than I do. It's been years since I fooled with Linux, and my brain kind of had a gridlock last night. I told my husband at one point, it's like, don't talk to me, don't look at me. I'm going to sit over there and read a book, and I'm going to have one of my sugar-free cookies that are made out of nut flour. Do not judge me. Do not give me any crap. Just leave me alone, because it had been one of those afternoons. Go measure your blinds. Enjoy your new home, Nancy. Have a good evening. So that's why I have to be out and about tomorrow at this place and with this guy. And it's just like I said, it seems to me that here in Costa Rica, if you don't come with with the right mindset and the right tools, you're just going to make it harder for yourself. And if you come here without doing your research, you're really going to shoot yourself in the foot, and you're really not going to like it at all. I did some calculations. Electric car powered by fossil fuel sources will get an equivalent of 70 miles per gallon. Whoa. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with any of this. And clearly we need to do something, because there's something going on with our weather, with the weather patterns. Something needs to change. And I'm not sure that electric cars are the way, unless they are all fueled by solar cells on the top roofs and things. Or cooking oil or something that, some renewable energy. Renewable energy is probably going to be the way to go for us in this world. But it's going to cost a lot to put that in place, and it ain't going to be easy. So there you go. Okay, I'm going to go. I'm sitting here looking out, and the bats have come out. The bats are circling in the yard. It's their evening emerge when they come out of the mango trees. It's my favorite time of the day. I've got to go watch the bats. Have a great day.